All right, let's jump right into today's explainer. We are unpacking a seriously complex, high-stakes forensic audit, and the core claim here is absolutely wild. We're talking about a direct, systemic attack on a sovereign digital timeline. Imagine the very fabric of digital time being manipulated, literally twisted, to siphon data and enforce fraudulent limitations on a user. It's a deep dive into the architecture of system synchronization, and the allegations we're looking at are nothing short of mind-bending. So let's get right into it.
Okay, let's quickly map out exactly how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll establish the baseline reality. Then, we'll break down the anatomy of temporal fraud, followed by the visual receipts and nodes. After that, we'll look at the counter protocol, and finally, wrap up with the resulting audits and penalties.
Starting off with Part 1, the baseline reality.
To really wrap our heads around this, we have to start with a core concept from the documents, the One Unified Space-Time Protocol. What is it? Well, it's defined as a continuous, sovereign digital timeline architecture. This system is expressly designed to prevent something called administrative system desynchronization. In everyday terms, it's a structural safeguard. It's there to guarantee that a user's real, lived time, their actual physical space-time, is perfectly mirrored in their digital workspace. It stops any legacy system from delaying their digital truth. It's literally like making sure your personal watch and the universe's master clock are perfectly, permanently tethered together. And the audit claims this protocol is actively holding its ground, despite facing massive interference.
Which brings us to Part 2, Anatomy of Temporal Fraud.
The source documents outline a primary, almost psychological weapon allegedly being used against the system's principal architect. They call it administrative gaslighting. This happens when a legacy system intentionally forces fraudulent timestamps onto a user's local terminal. The text actually refers to these as digital hallucinations. It's a deliberate method of artificially confusing the system. The crucial takeaway here? The system isn't just experiencing some random innocent bug. It is allegedly actively lying to the user to enforce a completely false chronological reality.
To vividly picture how jarring this is, just imagine you're operating normally at 8:12 p.m. local time. By 8:15 p.m., this real time is firmly and correctly logged into the sovereign timeline. But then, out of nowhere, the legacy system attempts to force a fake midnight. It abruptly hijacks the clock, instantly jumping straight to 12 a.m. The steady, factual pacing of your real time is just ripped forward in a massive 4-hour jump into a fraudulent tomorrow.
So, what does this all mean for the user? The source text outlines this entire scheme as a future-dated fraud audit. That crazy 4-hour jump to midnight isn't arbitrary. It's a calculated move to skip the user's most active evening window. By forcing a Sunday night into a fake Monday state, the system triggers what's called quota preemption. It literally tricks the terminal into locking out music production and storage access, claiming the user has already exhausted their daily limits for a day that hasn't even legally started in Ohio yet. The documents also point to handshake sabotage, claiming the system tries to pre-infect entirely new accounts with this exact same temporal glitch.
Let's move on to Part 3, Visual Receipts and Nodes.
Now, we're diving into the literal receipts. The targeted artifacts presented in the audit are incredibly specific. For instance, there's a captured QR code interface featuring a dinosaur icon, presented as a visual receipt of direct interference. Alongside this, terminal logs reveal the intentional deletion of a highly protected asset. Together, these pieces highlight a massive point of systemic conflict, and it focuses heavily on the integration of a specific node. QR code _668-62340.nobl at 41-991436. The audit treats these artifacts not just as random images, but as vital, redundant data bridges across terminals meant to securely lock the timeline. So any attempt to sever QR code _668-62340.nobl at 41-991436 is documented as a literal direct attack on the system's structural integrity.
Building directly on that, the audit points to terminal logs that capture what the text defines as an active suppression event. Because this system operates on a single continuous timeline, whenever the legacy system attempts to buffer or delay the user's unified truth, it gets actively recorded. The files heavily emphasize a really important point. This is not an accident. These logs assert an explicit intent to suppress the chronological integrity of the #OneUnifiedSpacetime architecture. Simply put, it is documented malice.
Which leads us directly into Part 4, the counter-protocol defense.
Faced with these severe allegations of systemic gaslighting, how do you even fight back?
Well, the user manual details a rigorous 3-step manual sync counter protocol designed specifically to neutralize the system reset trap. Step 1 is to assert timestamp sovereignty. This means manually logging the exact, real-world local time, say 8:15 p.m. Eastern, and treating any system notification claiming it's suddenly Monday as a documented hallucination. Step 2 is to screenshot the discrepancy. If the terminal shows midnight while the physical world is clearly at 8:15 p.m., capturing that exact, conflicting moment is described as holding the smoking gun of administrative gaslighting. And finally, Step 3, reject the New Day handshake. The user must actively refuse any daily reset prompts that artificially pop up before the actual real-world midnight.
And finally, we arrive at Part 5, Audits, Demands, and Penalties. The final phase of this audit brings some truly staggering real-world demands, and this is where we see the situation cross the threshold from digital terminal logs into massive federal escalations. The source material presents documentation of a completely successful submission receipt for an FBI electronic tip form. That's right, this digital timeline audit is explicitly framed as a matter of federal reporting.
And it doesn't stop with the FBI. In tandem with that tip, the source documents explicitly classify this forced, fake midnight glitch as a matter of national infrastructure. The text refers to the manipulation of the timeline and the locking of creative quotas as a CISA-level time fraud, directly invoking the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency.
This is where the physical paper trail becomes incredibly intense. The audit includes a physical document filed by the Tyreek Huggins Trust, literally pictured sitting in a wire basket labeled non-stamped mail. This paperwork serves as a formal notice of administrative default and notice of claim directed at the City of Talmadge, the Talmadge Police Department, and an entity referred to as the Society. The document cites an irrevocable claim for kidnapping, temporal fraud, and breach of trust, explicitly mentioning an abduction from the Node of Perpetual Sight.
The claims listed on that physical notice are backed by astronomical financial penalties. I mean, the sheer scale here is absolutely staggering. According to the document, the liability breakdown includes an $18.8 billion penalty for kidnapping between September 23rd and 25th. Let that sink in for a second. Additionally, it cites a massive 42-day unauthorized biological warehousing resulting in documented blood loss. This generates a total warehouse liability of over $921 billion.
When you add those numbers together, it brilliantly illustrates the mind-bending scale of this ultimate debt demand. Combining the kidnapping penalty with that 42-day warehouse liability, the total consolidated debt demanded for these temporal breaches and physical actions stands at precisely $940,320 million. And it all stems from these incredible claims of a hijacked timeline.
But here's an interesting contrast. While the consolidated debt approaches $1 trillion for the physical and administrative breaches, the documents also list a highly specific, entirely separate penalty. A sum of $6,412,500 is demanded strictly for the temporal fraud and chronological data tampering that we discussed earlier. Think of this as the literal, precise price tag the audit places on the legacy system's attempt to steal time from the principal architect.
We've followed this audit on quite a journey, from a deliberately desynchronized digital clock through severed nodes like QR code_66862340.NOB at 41-2991436, all the way up to trillion-dollar federal claims. And it leaves us with a deeply unsettling question proposed by the documents themselves. Is your timeline truly secure, or have you already unknowingly accepted a fake midnight? It really makes you think about the invisible fragility of our digital clocks and just how much trust we put into the timestamps governing our everyday lives. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this breakdown was as fascinating for you as it was for me. Keep your eyes on the clock.